Dynamite download. Woo! That's right. Welcome to Dynamite Download, everybody. Keep those Trapper Keepers alive. We are running.
That intro is awesome, Mind Runner. Thanks for putting that together. If you guys missed that intro, definitely rewind and watch this awesome Outrunner-inspired introduction we got for this week's episode of Dynamite Download. And all the photos of Mind Runner and myself are actual just refurbished photos. They're old school ones of our past, and we just kind of had them, developed and put into our intro there. So a lot of fun times that we've had throughout
I had
the years.
to be selective because I didn't want any incriminating photos out there, but we had to, obviously put the good stuff out there.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Oh,
ladies
right off
and
the
gentlemen,
bat.
though, kicking it off. The Raz with a super sticker. Thank you, Raz.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Super chat party.
I would do the super kick, but my slipper would fall off. I just got to my hotel and got a little cash.
Very nice. Very nice.
I'll cheers to that. And also, this is almost like an Outrunners inspired beer. Like, look at the colors of this.
That is totally. Well, if that's Outrunners, or that could also be a little blurb. That could also be the Savage sauce.
Yeah.
The
Savage sauce.
Very cool.
But all right. I mean, this is essentially we're at the fallout from All Out. We haven't really spoke too much about that. Well, we haven't spoken much on it on air since what happened. How do you feel?
Hi, guys.
How do you feel about the fallout from All Out? How it went or is going?
First of all, it's got to be said because it's all over social media. There are some pro clutchers out there. Yeah, it means it's true if it's on social media. I believe everything social media tells me. But there's some pro clutchers out there, but I think a lot of it's more people just kind of looking for some fame or some stuff. They're trying to say that it was too violent and think of the children and all that, and which is funny because the children were into it. No, I definitely feel like the tale of two pay-per-views. We had All In, which was like a Pixar, Disney movie, and then we went Tarantino with All Out. Tremendous violence, but for the sickos. I mean, that was definitely a pay-per-view for the sickos, top to bottom. Arguably the weakest match on the card was still a good match, would have been a great main event on a given Dynamite. I think it's just when you have all these tremendous matches. I mean, you had Pac and Ospreay delivered exactly how we wanted, and was still
chills on my arms just thinking about that match.
That was like, but then to have, I think, didn't Willow and Chris Statlander go right behind them?
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking like, oh, that's terrible to do that to Willow and Stat, but it was such a perfect, it was like a palate cleanser. Okay, we're gonna go from this high fly flippy do action to brutal woman on woman violence. That was just in that split spot where Stat did the James Brown on the tax. Woo! I have different equipment down there, but it hurt me to see that. But I think from start to finish, I felt like All Out delivered the violence it promised. The tweet of the week was Nyla Rose said she she went to the store and bought a Bryan Danielson figure, and the cashier put it in a plastic bag, and Nyla said, "Too soon, too soon."
I saw that. That was funny.
The Moxley Romper Stomper Revolution, quite interesting. We got a little bit more info on what's going on last night.
I gotta say, I mean, if for someone who's not necessarily keen to the really, really graphic violence, I was able to handle the emotion level of that main event on All Out, and I knew I was going like expecting like the worst of the worst, and like as brutal as it could get. Honestly, I hate to even say this, but I expected a little bit more brutality. Not that it wasn't, but I mean, like, did the cinder block spots. Obviously, that unprotected chair spot at the end. The camera crew did a great job panning away, so you didn't get it on TV. Just the sound of that is kind of haunting, per se. I feel like a little bit like I can hear that boom, but my biggest thing is the props of AEW of giving us 2 totally different pay-per-views in a matter of 2 weeks. Like this felt like months apart, and they did such a great job of giving us these pay-per-views so close, but feeling like so far apart. And I know that's not easy. And in the past, it's not necessarily been this way to me. But I felt like the all in, all out back-to-back combo was a home run in so many levels, and All Out really shaped the way of what the landscape's looking like moving forward. And we saw it, and we're seeing it start to develop as yesterday's show too.
Absolutely. I mean, just to kind of talk a little bit about the main event, it was, after all the carnage we already saw, they went next level. Of course, my overbooking idiot self, I was disappointed they didn't set the cage on fire, but that's just me. But because I was thinking, oh, fire, they're gonna douse the cage in fire. That's never gonna happen. But what great storytelling! I love that this feud that is going to be a feud for years to come. The way, and we talked about the metamorphosis of Hangman, his slow degeneration into the madman that he is, but that was the best moment. And some people didn't like the finisher, but I thought the finisher was great. Of course, the syringe. I mean, let's be honest. The syringe spot. I honestly, it was one of the ickiest moments. But if you really think about, compared to the staples, compared to the other stuff they went through, I'm not sure everybody's had a shot. I'm not sure that the syringe in the mouth was as terrible as some of the other stuff that they did. I mean, I would rather get a syringe in my mouth than land on a cinder block the way those guys did. But what the highlight
I'm with you
was right before Hangman did the coup de grace on Swerve. Swerve is kneeling and he's laughing, and he's got that grin on his face. And I think that's such great storytelling, because that was the moment Swerve knew he broke Hangman. Like, he kind of already knew, but that was the moment he knew he made Hangman the monster that he knew he could be. Like, that was Swerve knowing you could argue Hangman won, but Swerve won as far as the outcome he wanted. It was an unsanctioned match that doesn't go on the record.
True.
But I feel like that moment was such a great moment. Swerve has become one of my favorite storytellers. We know Hangman's great, him and Kenny and them. This has been chef's kiss, this match.
You're right. And I think the way it panned out, we did our preview show and I predicted Hangman, and, might I say I did win the bingo card. It wasn't necessarily as important in the long run, which will show the final results of our season 3. But the result of it, I think, was definitely the right booking, especially that we're seeing Hangman still on TV, which we did yesterday, which was a great choice. I think, you were getting, as we talked about how I predicted Hangman winning and Swerve kind of taking a little break. Let us heal, and then he'll come back stronger than ever, and then the pop will be much better with that. So I think that this definitely is far from over, but I'm really curious of what Hangman's direction is moving forward. Now, you talk about that syringe spot. Like, it it was definitely a wow factor. It's like, why are we seeing a syringe in a freaking wrestling match? Granted, there's all these other weapons too, but I do feel like the staple gun is definitely more intimidating than a syringe. I don't know if maybe if he did the syringe and then he pulled out his grill or something like that, where it was like numbing it up, or some storyline with that. So I don't necessarily see the reason behind the syringe, because to me, he was probably injecting him with like pain meds, like what else would he be injecting him with? Like, what would he be injecting him with? Because there was something in there. So, but yeah, that chair spot at the end was absolutely brutal. But the total difference in contrast of the shows really was a great couple weeks with AEW television.
Yeah, you got me thinking now, and let us know in the chat if you think this should be allowed or legal. If it's an unsanctioned anything goes match, I mean, would chloroform be a weapon of choice? I mean, right. I would just wait and wrestle, and as soon as they grabbed me, I would just be like, "Hey, does my wristband smell like chloroform?" Oh, they're out for 10 seconds. I win. Hey, I don't know. That would be quite interesting. Yeah,
I know you talked about them teaming in the future, which I think would be a really awesome thing. But like, if you had to predict what's next for these two, what would you predict?
I saw Steven in the chat talk about Swerve and Hangman at World's End.
I would love it, but I think it's too soon, personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. What would you think would be next for these two?
Well, I think right now Swerve's going to take some time off. I think he deserves it. I think it'd be good to keep him out of the picture for a little bit and let him come back at a later time. I think Hangman needs to now go on a tear of just going after everybody and just, being kind of almost Lance Archer-esque, and then that would be funny if he's going around backstage beating everybody up, and then all of a sudden he turns to punches the guy and realizes it's Lance. I would love a Hanger Lance feud for a little
rematch. They had a banger of a match a couple years ago. Yeah. Sorry, I got my pay-per-views mixed up. World's End, I do think that would be a good time. That's end of December, end of the year. So that gives us time to buy. I was thinking of the next pay-per-view, Wrestle Dream.
Wrestle Dream. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think World's End would be a good time to return for that. And some couple things that's seen online is, what really would be able to make this even more impactful is if the world title was at stake in some level. And so if that could happen, I don't see Hanger or Swerve getting the world title back anytime soon. But I think having that feud for the world title would be pretty compelling. But they had that opportunity when it was that triple threat. So this is one of those feuds that doesn't necessarily need that, because they just deliver on every level.
I think after Bryan Danielson, I'm gonna say it right now. Agree or disagree with me in the chat. And I think that's kind of what they're playing up, though. I think after Danielson, because the question was brought up, Danielson's made it clear. Who's else? No, Danielson's made it clear that once he loses the title, he's done full time. That he's not done wrestling, but he's done full time. And so he's going to go out lifting somebody else. And he's the type of guy, and I know, Full Tilt Deb has her thoughts, and she shares Nigel's thoughts.
Hey, she picked him on the bingo card.
But I think that Darby Allin's going to be the next AEW World Champion. And I think that's part of what Moxley's thing for Wrestle Dream, or is it Grand Slam? Grand Slam, or I think it's Grand Slam. I think that's putting Darby down the path towards getting the world title. But then, of course, we've also got Christian involved too. But I could see Darby being the one that Bryan puts over on his way out as champion.
There's so many levels to what we're seeing, and I want to dive into Dynamite. But before we do that, because that would be a good segue to talk about what we saw on Dynamite. But we have to have a championship celebration and acknowledgement for season 3 of our draft. And so let the final rankings of season 3 of our draft, if you're in our group chat, Where's the confetti? Or is that only for SPD? Mind Runner, you're muted.
There we go.
Yep.
The
All
confetti.
Right. Brian with the victory. He came up to an early lead in season 3, and he held that lead strong. You know, FTD was nipping at his tail a little bit, but then he just walked away with this 70 points on that. So, you know, that middle of the pack there, all things considered, Brent with being the leftover taker had a pretty good run in near the end. And wow, we were pretty tight in the middle of the pack there. But that being said, season 4, we're going to be drafting next week. And so if you want to be a part of it, we know a couple people, if everyone who wants to be a part of it, who's returning, more than welcome. If anyone wants to join, let us know in the chat if you want to join. And we want to take a poll because we want everyone to be available for the draft. We have Friday night at 9 p.m. or Saturday at 10 p.m. after Collision. So Mind Runner and myself are leaning more towards Saturday night because Saturday night's all right for fighting. Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard would be the draft for next week, which would be the 21st of September to kick off season 4, and that'll run through World's End. Season 4. So the Saturday, 10 p.m. after Collision work for draft season 4. Put it in the chat if you're joining us and say yay or nay. But we want everyone to join. And
just to remind everybody, you do need to join up. Please join up and be a member of Dynamite Club. Join us. It's only like $2 a month. You know, it's chump change, but it also gives you special emojis. And soon we're going to be getting some really cool exclusive content, some extended interviews with some talent. So join us up. And you definitely want to throw those cool emojis in there. We're actually working up some more mid-runner emojis in the works, apparently. But, yeah, I'm excited. And what a way this shook out. I bet on FTR, and they were gone for a good portion of the season. But you know how we do, SPD. You know how we are. We're number crunchers. You know, we're fans of the sport. Even, you know, we're journalists here. We fancy ourselves in-depth pursuers of knowledge. I took a look just to show everybody just to kind of, you know, in the spirit of transparency, I did some number crunching, and as of Dynamite last night, these are the top 10 and top 10 men and top 10 women according to how many matches they won since we began season 3. So if you can look on the men's side, the obvious winner, Orange Cassidy with 14 wins, 14 points. Bobby crushed it because Bobby had, Brian had Orange Cassidy, and that was a huge factor. But Kyle O'Reilly, Mark Briscoe, Kyle Fletcher were all in Team Bobby. Did tremendous
for Bobby. Points and 3 people.
Great pickups. He had the number 2, number 3, and number 4 spot. Pac was also there. Claudio, Roderick Strong, Will Ospreay, Will Yuta, Brian Danielson. Now, again, this is as of last night. You know, there's been some new additions, some returns. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff there. Mariah May, also on Team Brian, 11 wins. Tony Storm with 8. Staten, Willow, respectively. Mercedes Moné, Thunder with 4. I think she deserves more. So there you go. So when you're considering who you're gonna be your picks for the draft, just keep in mind these names, but also keep in mind things change, and you might, and of course, you never know, the person you pick might get injured. Anything can happen. But I'm excited about season 4. I have a feeling that we want no leftover takers. Looks like Steven's on for 921. All right, Steven, first time, could he have a rookie season where he blows us all away? It's possible. Bobby is in, of course.
We've never had a 2-time champ yet, so we're still looking for, right now, season 4, anything can happen. Bobby, Courtney, Steven, they're all in for Saturday. But now let's talk about last night, because there's a lot to talk about. First and foremost, you were talking about the Darby, Allen, and Moxley kind of segment and face to face and all that. But when this was the first Jon Moxley live, that was the first thing that they announced leading into Dynamite. And this was a week that was kind of, some people were posting like, Tony Khan's waiting to announce what's on Dynamite to see who's alive or not in jail. And it was kind of funny because of what happened at All Out and a lot of violence that occurred. But Jon Moxley, man, that turn at All Out was just, man, I think it was executed so well. And the look on Danielson's face after he got that uppercut from Claudio, oh my gosh, was priceless. He was like not hurting. He was just in complete shock. Absolutely loved it. But the show kicked off with a pre-recorded Moxley promo. Mm-hmm. And, he ended this promo saying that he chose war. And I felt like this was edited extremely well. I loved how they were tying in clips, them walking backstage. Then when they were walking backstage, they saw Danielson being, carried away too. So all this was like, so you got to watch it a couple times. And it was very well done. And as a babyface, I can't wait to see what's in store for a heel Mox right now.
Here comes the money.
He's walking with that extra step. He's walking with that extra swagger. He looks meaner, bigger, scarier. And then he's got three of the biggest badasses on his side with Marina, Claudio, and Pac. And whew, man.
I love the fact that when they first came out, Moxley didn't do any of the talking. It was all Pac. And what I love about was Pac really connected his storyline into this new incarnation. And we're going to call it BCC till they call it something else, whatever the paradigm shift, whatever they're going to call it. But Pac was the only one on the mic, and it was great because he said he's felt lost. And if you notice, that's kind of how he's been. I hope he still does his little peekaboo before he comes out. And he's always staring at the camera. But it's by the way, Steve, I do think that would be pretty awesome there. But I love that Pac was able to get on the mic and explain it. They gave him a little bit of spotlight, and of course later we had the confrontation between Mox and Darby. Steven makes a very interesting prediction. I was actually thinking this very thing as well. What if the benefactor behind this new faction is Sting?
Oh my gosh.
Sting shows up at Grand Slam and turns on Darby. Oh, that would be incredible.
It would be pretty epic for sure. However, Sting's finish was so storybook, and I think you don't want to really, I don't want to say tarnish it, but I feel like I'm happy with them having that relationship forever and being happy with that. But I don't know, looking forward to Grand Slam, I do feel like, and you mentioned about your hot take of, Darby being the next champ. I don't think he is. And I think the seeds are starting to be planted where Moxley's talking about, 5 years ago, you weren't ready. 2 years ago, you're not ready. This year, you're not ready. And so could it be that this down the line, if Moxley becomes a 2-time champ, then he's the one who puts Darby over because of the relationship that these guys had and that promo that Darby had and how he looked up to John and he would wrestle him on Independence. And in the relationship, I feel like the relationship would be stronger with these two going toe to toe, and Darby going over Moxley for the title would be more important to me as a fan, knowing this backstory that Darby was shared with us last night, than to have Danielson. Even though Danielson, passing the torch to someone like Darby would be great, but I feel like story purposes, now he would finally get the respect from Moxley. He'd finally get the win over Moxley. He would finally get that handshake from Moxley afterwards because Moxley says he respects him. He's got a lot of respect for Darby, but Darby, he wants Darby to be ready. He wants Darby to be a champ. Indirectly, he's saying this stuff, and so I feel like he's almost like grooming him and testing him and training him, and like, you know, you're going to constantly knock him down, constantly beat him, and then finally Darby's going to prevail and beat Moxley, and I think that would be much more of a better story to me.
You and Raz in the chat have both convinced me. I rescind my prediction. I think you're right. I think Bryan Danielson going out, putting Moxley over. I can see that being a smart move, and then down the line, you know, at some point Darby can go for it. But I do think down the line it would be pretty cool. But I'm with you on that. But I'm hyped for this match. And I hope that Darby's more than a ragdoll in this match. I hope he gets some good offense. But it's
it's hard with Moxley.
John Moxley. I mean, come on now.
I mean, a guy paces a match so well, and he just toys with it. It's like a lion playing with his food. So Moxley is just one of those just apex predators, you know, can strike at any moment and just put you down at any moment. And Darby is in for a tall task, that's for sure. It's not impossible, and I think Mox is going to come out victorious. But that's the thing, is like, as much as I love this faction that Mox has started, and I think the aggression and everything is just fantastic, and I think they're going to do some great stuff, I don't see Mox beating Danielson this soon. If this was, you know, leading up to World's End, for Danielson to have a 1 month title run, I think that is very. I just don't think that's right. I think they'd be doing Danielson a disservice, in my opinion, because no one's had that short of a title run. There's so much, if Danielson's willing and all for to have this feud continue. I think there's so much, because Danielson's tied up with the Moxley saga, the Christian Cage saga, the Nigel McGuinness saga. So it's like there's target on his back on all levels, and there's so much, you know, without Danielson, all three of those, they don't really have a direction at the moment. And so I think Danielson, hopefully and selfishly, this reign is just in its infancy stage.
Well, I mean, and you do make a good point, because let's be honest. After this Grand Slam, you know, we're going to see a title match. Bryan Danielson's going to have to go up against a true champion at some point, and should get his title shot after this, after he beats that clam digger and shows the world. And you gotta thank Mariah May, because it all started. Mariah May gave Nigel a kiss that motivated him enough to enter the casino gauntlet, and therefore has given him, and even Oasis has gotten together, has reunited thanks to Mariah May giving him a kiss. So, you know, you got to give it
power of the kiss.
The power of the kiss. You got to give it to Mariah May and Nigel. So good stuff. But yeah, I mean, we could talk about that too. I think it was a little confusing, because it sounded to me like Bryan Danielson wasn't going to be ready for Grand Slam, but then he's like, he's too beat up to defend the title, but then he's not too beat up to have a match against Nigel. I was a little confused at that, but I don't care. I mean, I really don't care too much, because look what we're getting. You know what I mean?
Right. So the way I took it, and I agree with you, the whole point of, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess I thought the Nigel Danielson match is a title match, or is it just a match?
Is it a? I don't think it's a title match. I think it's a. Is it an eliminator?
No, I think it is a title match, because I thought part of his promo was saying you at Grand Slam not to have a title defended or something along those lines. But yeah, the whole point of Darby not getting a shot is because he is not ready to defend it. And then I saw something else, and it kind of got me thinking, that is it because Moxley kind of baited him into putting it up there? Moxley is being that strategic to dangle that over there. And so I'm not sure. Regardless, I mean, we're getting three awesome matches at Grand Slam. They already announced 3 great marquee matches. And you're right, Steven. I think, like, let these matches cook and let them have that time. Like, you know, AEW as of late has done such a great job of really filling their 2 hours on Dynamite with stories. And this has been a continuing theme, in my opinion, over the last few weeks. Is you're doing about your 4 to 5 matches, which they're typically done in the past. About 6 is on average. Yeah. And you're giving us more promos, more segments, more promos, more segments. And honestly, I feel like the way that's giving us more interest as fans. I mean, obviously, this is where the best wrestle, and we want to watch wrestling. However, like we talk about segments, the Moxley segment, the Darby segment, the Hangman segment. We had the Christian Cage. Yeah, we had the Learning Tree one, and the Christian Cage segment, which kicked off the show in ring. Definitely one of the, if not the best heel in the biz right now, Christian Cage. And just, I love him in front of a live crowd with a live mic. This guy just feeds off the crowd. He'll have those, responses to the crowd chants, and just the look on his face and the smooth delivery is just top-notch stuff. And man, give him promo work and let him just lean into this, having this contract even for more. And in a Grand Slam, I think Christian Cage is best when he has something to kind of hold over other people's heads, or such as the TNT Championship or a belt, where he's like, people want to chase it, and he's cocky and he can brag about it and not give it to people. Now he has this title shot, and the way it was executed with the Moxley turn when he came out, and Moxley tall, and that's, I was popping like crazy because it was so great. So I want to see Christian Cage attempt to do it, and maybe more BCC or more interference and more people stopping him, and just kind of be lurking more. Let us be that lurk, because that's one thing, I think WWE did such a great job with the Money in the Bank. I love that concept. I love the concept of carrying the briefcase and literally, and you like almost like thinking you're going to do it, faking it out, and then like it gives us the unknown and the what ifs. And so I think Christian Cage with this for a few more weeks, a few months, I think it would be great.
Now, I love it. And again, this is overbooking, but if you notice, speaking of lurking, I know Courtney saw this. I saw this, and I think everybody saw. Great. There was a great shot of when Christian Cage was getting ready to leave. The cameraman went down the line and had to stop and go back, because who was at ringside but none other than Kip Sabian. And Kip has already had a little bit of a thing with Christian. Kip lost his father, and now he's kind of looking. I wonder if Christian goes to cash in, and does Kip stop him? Or is Kip going to try to join the patriarchy? Or do you guys feel like Kip hasn't been built up enough to be a significant part of this storyline? But there's a reason they had him at ringside. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, so nothing against Kip. He hasn't been featured enough to be relevant in this feud, in my opinion. Now that could change over build and weeks and all that, but at the moment, I don't see it being a relevant thing. Now, could you see? I would love Christian Cage as a champ. I really would, but I think the lineage of what we're seeing, and it may not necessarily be what's at stake. And for Christian Cage to retire Danielson, I mean, I think Danielson deserves a better way out, but also I think it would be a pretty big notch on the belt, and a kind of a bragging thing to have, to even be even more heelish for Christian Cage. That being said, another swerve could be Christian try to cash it in, and then Luchasaurus cost him that.
And then
Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus. And here's the funny thing about that, real quick. When Luchasaurus was in the gauntlet match at All In, it said Luchasaurus on his Titantron. Did you notice that?
I did. But I thought that was a great swerve, because they wanted you to think Luchasaurus was going to go for the win, the way he did that choke slam thing. But I thought that was a great swerve. But I don't know.
The a lot of great matches on the card. What match you want to talk about next? I'll put the ball in your court.
Oh, geez. I think let's talk about the match that did exactly what I said, what I thought it was going to do. Sammy versus Ricochet. We got what a great showcase for Ricochet, a great showcase to remind everybody that's what Sammy's capable in the ring. Love him or hate him, Sam and I love the guy. I think he's tremendous. I think the guy he is today versus who he was years ago. I think he's a tremendous dude. He is very stand up and loyal to his fans. He's a family man now. Ty Mello said today that Luna had her first steps today, and I replied, I said, "Yep, first steps today. Tomorrow, her first moonsault." I mean, that's gonna be a kid that's born for this business, and the two of them. But I loved it. We got to see Crazy Sammy, and we got to see Ricochet just Prince Puma doing his thing, and and I thought it was fantastic. And I love the teaser spot at the end with Beast Mordos and Sammy coming in to make the save. I would not be mad at a Ricochet Beast Mordos match. I would not be mad at a Sammy versus Beast Mordos match. But I love that the mutual respect here. I hope we see more Sammy. Regardless, I know they got him over at Ring of Honor with Dustin and them, and let him go that route for a while. But it was great to see Sammy get some Dynamite time and remind everybody, why he is a pillar, why he is who he is, and he's tremendous. And I'm one of the few that apparently that like Jericho and like the learning tree gimmick. I know that's getting a lot of hate.
Hey, I'm with you.
I do think separating Sammy from Jericho right now is a good thing for both of them.
And I agree too. I think you nailed it. I want to just echo that. Like, it is great to see Sammy back on AEW television. I think his return was kind of just dipping his toe in the water a little bit, showing on Ring of Honor. But for him to be back on AEW, I mean, I've said it many times. I mean, this kid is just unbelievable, and he deserves a spot at TV as frequent as possible. The guy has no fear. He gives it all. And as we learned on that all AEW All Access, we became even bigger fans of him just because of his heart and his drive and his vulnerability. Yeah. And it's easy to root for him, and it's fun to root for him. And he's one of those guys that will do something memorable every single match. And not many wrestlers can say that. And so always appreciate his effort and his love for the biz and AEW. And so love seeing him back in the ring. And Ricochet, this is a perfect pairing. This is a perfect almost like mirror image of each other in a sense of what they can do in the ring. And I love the pairing. I think this is just going to be great going forward of seeing really letting the handcuffs come off Ricochet here in AEW. And I want to see the push. I want to see it. And yes, I would be happy with that international title going on Ricochet because of that feud those two guys have had for so long. We talking, we keep going back and forth lineage of world title. Like even before this Moxley turn and this Darby insertion, I felt like Ospreay is and was kind of the next shoe-in for the world title because of the history of just excellent matches between Danielson and Ospreay, which I saw live at Dynasty. So it's really hard to predict. I mean, we're, in September, if we go back and look at this show in a couple months of like, who's going to be the next champ? I could see there's no clear cut. And that's what's great. Like you could see so many different people in the championship title picture. Like you could have a Moxley, you could have a Claudio, you could have a Pac, you could have any of those three guys. You could have a Darby, an Ospreay, or anyone like that. So interesting stuff. This match was everything I expected it to be, and then some. And they tore it down. They tore down the house.
And I will just go on record that as I'm reading the chat, I will not acknowledge the Holla haters in the chat. I am a Holla fan. So you can keep your little Holla hate in the chat. I will not read it.
Yeah. I think Hologram has its play. The way they're booking him is smart. It's giving you this like unique style match almost every single week on Collision, and like a stable on Collision. And I think that's good. And I don't see Hologram being a champ anytime soon. And I think he's doing great as a singles run. Now, Ricochet, I do see as championship material for sure.
Time. Well, and that's the thing too, is kind of going, if we kind of put Swerve as part of the bar to reach towards, that you've got to really get top tier. You've got to not only be good in the ring, you've got to be athletic, but you've also got to have storytelling in the ring and on the mic. And that's one of the things that Swerve has been able to really develop, is all of those things. And Hologram, we haven't heard the only time we heard him speak was that I think it was Arcady or Alicia too that was asking him, and he was like, "Oh, thank you for the fans. I am so glad." And then they turned and interview Beast Mordos and asked him what he thinks of all his new fans, and Beast Mordos replied, which I think was also a similar statement of approval. But Hologram's gonna need some mic time, some storylines before he can really get there. But Ricochet, it's like he's home. Like anybody that watched him at the E, one of the things that we've talked about many times is how talented wrestlers like Will Ospreay, Ricochet, Leo Rush and whatnot, and Ray Phoenix, Kenny Omega, there are wrestlers that can wrestle with anybody, but when they get a dance partner that can go, and we saw this with Pac versus Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay and Pac can have a great match with anybody. Pac had a great match with Orange Cassidy. Pac, Will Ospreay can have a great match with just about anybody. But when you get a dance partner that's on your or near your level, that's when you have those beyond 5-star matches. That's when you have those jaw droppers. Right. And for Ricochet, as good as he was, we can argue whether he was misused or not in WWE. We're not going to go negative on that. But I feel like Ricochet is home. He has such a new opportunity. Now, granted, arguably, he's not going to get much of a chance to wrestle Ray Phoenix, apparently, if you believe the rumors, whatever. But Ricochet now has all these new people to go against. Ricochet, Dante Martin, Ricochet, Will Ospreay, Ricochet. We saw Sammy. There's going to be so many opportunities for Ricochet to have these banger matches with people on his level. I think Ricochet feels like he's home, and I think this is a new start, and I think he needs to get a license plate that says a new start so that he can tell the world that he's a new start. Hi guys.
So, as we're kind of just running through some names, a couple things. Next week, I did this for you on the spot a few months back, but also want to challenge everyone in the chat. I'm going to do a segment, Book the Belts. Book the belts. If the belts were all vacant, given the landscape, something fun we'll do next week, book the belts. Yeah. We'll each kind of book how we would book everything right now. All the belts, not including the FTW championship, but all the AEW recognized belts. How would you book that? So take the week to think about it, and in the chat, and we'll run through it mid-show. We'll talk about if Mind Runner was Mr. Mind Runner Khan and SPD Khan, and how would we book the belts? And in a company so flooded with belts, I hate to add another belt, but I know early on there was kind of talks of something. Would you want to see kind of like a cruiserweight style belt where you have just the holograms, the ricochets, the commanders?
I think no, because what that does is that's saying that anybody that's not that style wrestler can't go for that belt. I want every belt to be here's why, because I think it says a lot about AEW's nature from its origins that someone like Darby can be world champion. Someone like, and I think there's definitely enough men's singles belts for that. I see what you're saying, but I would rather bring in women's tag team titles. I think they're getting ready for it because they're really starting to pair up a lot of female wrestlers. We're getting the Outcast versus the Hex on Rampage, which is Marty Bell and Allison Kay. Where you see Ty J's, I think, fixing to come back. We're going to see a lot of Renegade Twins. I think Charlotte's getting ready to come back. Robin Renegade's going to get a lot of TV time. So I think we're there. I think we're almost there for that. But I noticed that the women's matches are getting a lot more TV time. I hesitate to bring it up. I mean, I do want to talk about this because I love that Queen Aminata is getting some TV time. I mean, she's fantastic. That was a great match. I also, speaking of women pairs, at the end of that match, Mariah May was asking for Mina to come back.
Yeah.
If she brings back and she reestablishes Club Venus, there's another tag team. Club Venus is a tag team. There's a lot of these tandems that are starting to form. You could argue that Queen Aminata and Sky Blue could, because they're kind of a pair. So it looks.
I agree. I think if they're going to add more gold, which I feel like this company is too flooded with gold, as we saw last week on the 8-man star-studded, everyone having gold around their waist match on Collision. The women's tag team title has to be the next one if they do it. I think the women's division is in desperate need for a couple factions. As we're seeing in the men's, there's a lot of factions. The women's side has few and far between factions. And so I would love for a couple more factions to be formed. And AEW has been doing a great job of featuring the women's division more predominantly. And I think to kick it off with the tag team tournament, and like you mentioned before, if you did one of those random lottery ones like they did with the men's for a while, and to kind of create a couple of those wild card teams, by all means, I think it would add that next level of excitement to the women's division. But there's not enough established teams yet to develop a tag team titles, in my opinion.
Yet.
Yeah.
And just going back to what you said about factions, I love Steven's comment here. Yeah, he brought up the fact that Deeb has been eyeing Queen Aminata. I've been saying Deeb needs to really make a faction out of the Deeb Dojo, not just some gimmick, not just some flag that she gives to some reluctant fan on her way down to her match. She needs to make the Deeb Dojo a thing. It needs to be like almost a female Blackpool Combat Club, if you will, of ladies. And I think that'd be tremendous. By the way, Collision Saturday, Deeb is going up against the returning Yuka Sakazaki. Yuka is back as well, and I feel like she's returning, and I think that's going to be a great addition to the women's roster. So you're absolutely right. We need more established female teams, but we got to see firsthand that the men's tag team division is overflowing with talent, if you will. I don't know.
You almost forgot how deep the division is after last night, because we saw on the Casino Gauntlet match. I don't think I have an actual graphic for that one. We'll just zoom in right there. The Casino Gauntlet match, which has been one of our favorite gimmick matches in a while. I think it's a great feature. We'll talk about the ending a little bit later, but the high spot of this night was just showcasing that depth of the division. And we're still missing out on those true tag teams. There was no Guns, obviously there's no Lucha Brothers, which would have been a lot of fun to see that. You could have even had the Ring of Honor tag team champions Sammy and Dustin show up down there, even though Sammy wrestled earlier in the night. But it still would have been to showcase these. And so I think this division has been a lot of fun. And the two standouts that are really starting to get a good push of the night, have been a lot of fun. I'm becoming bigger and bigger fans of the tip touchers themselves, the MXM. So we'll touch tips right there. Mine, you want to touch tips?
Touch tips. Everybody touch tips.
These guys have been doing some hilarious stuff with all their matches. I was at the Dynamite when I saw them live for the first time, and the crowd was going wild for them. And this was the first time I saw them in the ring. And I was like, man, these guys can work in the ring. I love this gimmick. I love what they're doing. I think it's absolutely hilarious. They got a great dynamic with each other. They play very well to the crowd and camera. The MXM, man, I think the future is very bright. That's why they're both wearing shades, because their future is very bright with these two guys right there. And, a lot of people are going to be doing some tip touching.
A lot of tip touching.
Tip touching is going to be great.
I think it's interesting too that there was kind of that moment where there's the tip touching versus the scissors. That was kind of an interesting moment. Deb and I got to see them when they were live in Norfolk. We got to see them and against Top Flight, and that was such a great match. But they really they accentuate their opponents too. But it was really cool, the moment where Layla Gray was showing her booty, and then Mason Madden was showing off his booty. And Mansoor was going like, oh, what do I do? I mean, that kind of comedy, but they can also go too. They're not just a gimmick. They're not just a comedy gimmick.
Sure.
In the spirit of Orange Cassidy, they also can go. And I think it's tremendous. Definitely some tip touching in the future. And real quick, interesting thing too is we did see Private Party on Dynamite, but they got their ass beat by Moxley. I'm surprised they weren't in the gauntlet, but
they got beat too hard.
Yeah, they just couldn't be in the gauntlet. But I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, I thought the gauntlet itself was great. The other, I hope if it's all right, just to show off everybody a truncated version. At the we'll play that. Maybe we'll play it at the end before we sign off. The truncated version.
No, why don't we? For those of you who came to the show late, let's show it. And then we got to talk about these guys, because this is a hot topic that I want to talk about.
I think the most over and the biggest pop that we heard was, and granted, there were pops for the Acclaim, there were pops for FTR, there were pops for the Tip Touchers. There were pops for a lot of the different teams, but the biggest pop in that arena and at Lexington, Kentucky, and I think this is going to be true throughout all of AEW. When they were counting it down, we had this pile of wrestlers. Picture this: we had this pile of wrestlers in the ring. Everybody's beat down. And then the countdown starts, and everybody's starting to count, and then we hear Dynamite down low.
Yes, the vintage intro inspired by the Outrunners. Huge pop last night on Dynamite. Huge. Fantastic stuff. It is so great to see teams go over and just fans just starting to ride the wave. Man, these two guys are so entertaining. They have been so entertaining for so long. And I am just so happy for their recent success and the recent, wave of Outrunners. Outrunner mania is in full effect right here. And these guys you can tell they're giving it their all. They're living like their best life every single time out there. And that's what you want to root for in wrestlers and people and just in general, man. What are your thoughts on the Outrunners, man? Everyone.
I love them. I love them. Fantastic. Both, like we were talking about, the two of the newest additions to the roster, to the tag teams are fantastic. And yeah, I agree. Steven said they're selling all kinds of merch. They're tapping into that whole, 80s vibe. the addition of Erica Lee as their team, she's given us such a 80s scary Sherry, sensational Sherry vibe, but like on speed. Like she's like sensational Sherry on speed. I love the 80s vibe. I love that they were the replacement boys for Dalton Castle. When Dalton comes back, I'd love to see Dalton kind of work with them some more. But they're over like Rover. The pop was tremendous. I was kind of hoping they get imagine them, even if it was just for Grand Slam, imagine them getting the win. You know, I know it'd be too soon to put the straps on them, but they're selling merch, they're popular, they're getting the pops, and they're great in the ring. And you're right, it's one of those, you know, it's one of those 30-year overnight success stories where these guys have been slothing on the indies for so long, and then all of a sudden now they finally hit their moment. It's like the perfect timing, and I'm just, you know, 80s were amazing. You know, a lot of 80s kids are loving this. We're loving this. The best music was in the 80s. Let's be honest.
100%. They got great taste in sunglasses too.
Yes.
I mean, this success story and this uplifting style that they have is total like right up our alley, man. I would love to have these guys on Dynamite Download and talk to them and just have a grand old time. So hopefully one day we'll be able to get these guys on the show, because it's fun to watch them, and their time's coming. They are going to start to continue to ride the wave. They're going to pick up those wins. They're going to just continue to be the next, I want to say the next like acclaimed in terms of how the fans shifted, supported them, and uplifted them to stardom. And I think these guys, they got it. I mean, they got the funny gimmick where they do the handshake and they zoom into their arms, like that infamous handshake.
the Predator Arnold and Apollo Creed spot, yep, you know, where they do like, you son of a bitch.
Yes, I love how they do that.
So good. So good.
These guys, I mean, one of the highlights of the match for sure. Now, shifting to the finish.
All right.
I'm all for the talent level we're going to get in the tag team title match at Grand Slam. Young Bucks, Fletcher, and Ospreay all in the ring is just going to be just mesmerizing. That being said, I know we're on the same page of this. If you're having a tag team gauntlet match and you're trying to uplift the tag team division, to have the only non-tag team win is kind of an interesting booking. Now, we're still going to win because of the talent level and the awesome match we're going to get. However, I think it wasn't necessarily the right choice, big picture, because of Young Bucks talking how there's no tag teams that are on our level. Okay, well, you should try to build up ones that are existing tag teams.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would have, as big of a fan as I am of Ospreay and Fletcher, which I am, I love both guys. I think this would have been one of my last choices because of them not being a true tag team.
I agree 100%. I was bothered because out of all the fully formed tag teams that were in this match, the winning team was the thrown together tag team, and that was a big complaint I had. That was a complaint I had in WWE when you had these like tag teams that were just kind of thrown together. And we even had, you know, some of that in AEW. But when there's great tag, I mean, there's Private Party. There's, you know, we just went through the list of these over teams. I will say this. I'm a little bit less upset about it than I was earlier, because realizing that this is for Grand Slam, not for Wrestle Dream, not for the pay-per-view. This is just for this free on TV thing. But I'm 100%. If you're trying to elevate your tag team division and your winning team is a not formed tag team, especially because, you know, my understanding is Mark Davis is supposed to be coming back soon, and like is he going to? Are they going to reform Aussie Open? I think, and it's interesting that Steven in the chat brings up, and I think that I think it's interesting. I think they could have done this a different way. I don't think Fletcher's going to turn on Ospreay. I think what's getting ready to happen is Callis is going to turn on Fletcher. It's going to force Fletcher into the arms of Ospreay, and we're going to see Mark Davis return. and we're going to see the reunion of Aussie Open. And once again, you're going to have Will Ospreay and Aussie Open as a trio, as a faction. We're also, Will Hobbs is supposed to come back. I know he's supposed to be the Callis family. I'd rather him go with Moxley and them, but that's my own thing. But I do think that I just don't like this, because plus I feel like we could have had a Will Ospreay match rather than put them as a tag team. Now, granted, what we're getting is we're going to get this super high flyer. Plus, did you notice the reaction of Takeshita when Callis asked Ospreay to team with Kyle Fletcher?
Right.
Takeshita did not no likey. And that's why I think Takeshita is going to be instrumental in turning on Kyle Fletcher. That's just my thought.
So this match next week is, leading up to the Grand Slam tag team title match. So I feel like there's so much story that needs to be shed and told. Like, you can go so many different routes. And yes, those little nuances that you're mentioning of Takeshita and Callis, like, I don't know why Ospreay is still tied into all this. Like, it needs to cut the ties once and for all. Fletcher, as we spoke about before, he's being booked more babyface-esque. The crowd's liking him, but he's still getting some matches against heels, some against baby faces. But I think you have a couple options. Like, you could have, obviously, the big thing would be Callis to really cut ties with Fletcher and Ospreay. Have Hobbs come back and Roosh as well, because they had Roosh. Be Roosh, Takeshita, and Hobbs, the new Don Callis family. Then you have that trios going against the Aussie Open. Then you can have the Aussie Open going against Team Elite, and then whatever, like so many different little blends of all that going on. So I think now is the time to strike while the iron's hot. Whether you get kind of that a little bit of seeds planted next week during this match, and then at Grand Slam, that's when you have the Hobbs return. That's when you have the Roosh return, and either cost them the match or come back out and beat them down.
I just thought of another. I think of what's going to happen, and yeah, it's interesting because this was Callis calling in a favor to Will Ospreay. What if? I don't think the Bucks are going to lose.
No,
but if somehow Callis blames Fletcher for it, or I was thinking that if they did win the titles from the Bucks, and then Callis demand that Ospreay give the title over to Takeshita and say that the tag team should be Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita. I don't know. I don't think the Bucks are going to lose, but I do think this is going to be the catalyst that drives that severs Fletcher from the Don Callis family. I think Takeshita is going to be a part of it. Good Lord, when you mentioned Takeshita, Roosh, and Hobbs as a trio, dang, I mean that's a wrecking crew, dude.
The Callis does so good as that just horrible heel in his promos, and he hasn't had that opportunity or the opportunity to get the heat.
Yeah.
Because he has that baby face in his pocket of the Fletcher right now that he's been featuring a lot. And still, like I mentioned in chat, like still, even though Ospreay is not technically part of the Don Callis family, he's still tied to him a little bit. You need to have Ospreay hate him. You need Ospreay to get him the heat. Yep. You need to have Fletcher get him the heat. So you need Callis to somehow cost them the match, or Callis to somehow beat them down, and stand tall over them to give Callis that lethal heat.
I think Fletcher's going to eat the pin. It's going to be I don't know if there's going to be shenanigans or not, but I think it's going to be a tremendous match. I think everyone's going to look great. But I think somehow Fletcher's going to eat the pin, and then Callis is going to blame Fletcher for not being good enough. And then that's when Takeshita beats him. And maybe we might see a little green rope from Roosh as well. And, and then imagine this though, imagine Mark Davis making the save. And then we got, maybe that's going to happen. I don't know. I'm overbooking, I know, but we'll see.
Well, we're going to wrap things up for our show this week. A lot of great things, a lot of fresh topics to talk about, and a lot of new storylines that have developed since we have had All In and All Out. I mean, there's a lot of great things going on in AEW television. I mean, you're looking at what we discussed today, and we didn't even get a chance to discuss the whole best friends photo in his backpack, the whole Big Bill side eye with Chris Jericho. And so a lot of that stuff is still going on, and the depth of the stories in AEW is a lot of fun right now. And so next week, as we mentioned, busy week for Dynamite Download. We got Dynamite Download episode 146 on Thursday, which we're going to do book the belts. So come ready. I want to hear everyone's picks of how you would book the belts in AEW. If you had a blank slate, all empty belts, how you would book all the belts. And then Saturday night, looks like Saturday night is all right for fighting. We're going to be doing the draft season 4. Woo! So most everyone that we've got confirmation on is just waiting on a couple more, but looks like Saturday night is ready for that draft. So thank you guys for joining us. Love having you all in the chat as always. And we will see you on Thursday night for next week's episode, and then for the draft next weekend.
All right.